without worrying about his reserves of power. After the terrifying battle was over, the White Tiger clan began to think about what they should do next. It was hard for them to believe that Jigvi was taken away from them so easily. The guys understood that although Li Chang did not violate their warnings, they should not pretend that nothing had happened. They were afraid that during the attack on Jigwi, the guy was able to get his hands on an illusory pearl, which their department was hunting for. A fighter with a huge scar on his face said that they had no choice but to teach the recruits a lesson. His comrade was not sure that it would be too difficult for them. He saw with his own eyes that this guy not only extinguished the flame of Jigwi, but absorbed it with his own powers. He believed that defeating such a monster was far from an easy task. But his comrade was of the opinion that this, on the contrary, was the most convenient moment for an attack. He believed that Li Chang and Beck were tired from fighting Jigwi, and even if Tyrant had absorbed the all-consuming fires, it was obvious that he was exhausted from the battle. The fighters planned to defeat the talented recruit and find out whether he was able to get the illusory pearl. If he didn't give up valuable information, they weren't afraid to simply get rid of him. Their confidence was so unshakable because they did not agree with the CEO's opinion that Li Chang-sung was capable. It seemed to them that he was just constantly lucky. At the moment when they wanted to attack the exhausted recruits, a low male voice of a stranger addressed them, surprised by the unexpected meeting. These guys alerted not only the White Tiger clan fighters, but also the players who ended the battle with the boss. The killers of the Hayoff clan were able to track down those they were looking for. The guards of the White Tiger clan investigation area had long been familiar with who could threaten their safety. The surprised guys asked how the killers were able to enter the territory of their training camp. The man with a scar on his face and a smug grin replied that they just walked in through the front door like everyone else at the training camp. At that moment, the fighters began to realize that there was some kind of flaw in their checks, due to which the embittered killers of the destroyed Hayoff clan were able to sneak into the list of recruits. They knew very well who they were dealing with. The guy with the scar on his face was Yang Xinghe, known as the Iron Mace Demon. Standing next to him is an equally brash fighter, Park Ji-pyo, better known as the Player Saw. And the last member of their squad, the cowardly Bei Wu-jen, nicknamed Crimson Target. The main problem for the White Tiger clan fighters was that instead of the Hayoff assassins going to another dungeon, they sniffed out information regarding the training camp and came here in search of the thing they needed. Their appearance meant that they had already learned about the research centers here. One of the fighters decided not to waste time. He began to use his skills and took out a chain to which a mace was attached. Taking a look at his incredible technique and terrifying speed, the superiority of the assassins over the White Tiger fighters became obvious. The ordinary fighter believed that if they faced these three killers, the result of the fight would be quite obvious. He decided to resort to a separation tactic in which one of them went for reinforcements while the other stayed behind to buy some time. But as it turned out, they underestimated the skills of their opponents, and Park Ji instantly found himself in front of one of them. A fierce battle began between two clan fighters who were previously in an alliance. The assassins' pressure made the difference in their strength clear. Even though Park Ji could easily destroy his enemy, he decided to prolong the fun. At the same moment, the guy who went for reinforcements was reached by the killer's mace under the name Yang Xing. The man could not dodge due to the enormous speed of the attack, so he decided to block this blow. The strength of his sword could not compare to the strength of his opponent. Due to the destruction of the sword, the White Tiger clan fighter found himself unarmed. He couldn't dodge such fast attacks, but there was no way to block either. Because of this, a combination of mace attacks knocked him out of the game. Having destroyed the enemy, the man began to furiously yell that the clan fighters were too weak. His comrade asked him to be careful and not to simply kill a valuable lead again, but Yang Xing replied that they had no reason to worry, because they had 3 witnesses left at their disposal. Because of his words, Park Ji was forced to hold back so as not to accidentally be left without information that was valuable to them. While the White Tiger clan's fighters were on the verge of a crushing defeat, Baek Jevel covered his comrade, who was still recovering from a recent battle. An assassin of the Hai Phong clan named Bei Wugum was approaching them. Baek asked what they wanted. The fat guy replied that although he had no particular desire to fight, he had to get rid of the witnesses. In response to his words, the calm and confident Li Chan ironically replied that he was not going to die at all. Seeing his comrade's gaze, Baek was convinced that Li Chang still had the ability to fight. Even though he had the most talented newcomers of the White Tiger clan in front of him, Bei Wu Zhen was still arrogant. Using Haof's skills, he said that he didn't care who he killed. In response to his words, Li Chang imperiously raised his index finger into the sky using a mysterious skill. After that, he turned to the Haof fighter with a sly grin and promised that he would think about the offer to fight if Bei Wu Zhen could evade this attack. Within a moment, the self-confident mace demon's face changed. Those who had previously fought began to sense the real danger posed by the new recruit. The killer of the Haof clan, Pi Wu Zhen, completely forgot that he was going to destroy 2 recruits of the White Tiger clan with his own hands. A threat loomed before him, casting doubt on their chances of survival. The system reported that Boss Jigui had appeared in front of them. With a terrifying look, Li Chang said that it was incredible luck that these monsters laid eggs. With anticipation, he asked the rowdy guys from Haof for their opinion on how the female Jigui would react when she learned of the death of her partner. A huge spirit with incredible power shouted loudly in memory of his beloved. After this, fiery lightning, launched by the spirit, began to move towards the players. Powerful explosions over a huge area created a kind of assault that was difficult to dodge. The unimaginable power of this monster took the Haof fighters by surprise and they had to retreat. One of the fighters turned to Yang Xinghe and asked him to take care of the monster. He wanted his comrade to drive him in the other direction. But as it turned out, it was already too late. Jigvi closed the distance and was ready to strike. Within a moment, a series of powerful explosions sounded, and the Haof fighters began to scream in failure. They could not dodge such a sudden attack of unimaginable power. Li Chan expected such a turn of events. He explained that the female protects the chicks, and the male gets food. Since her partner was in danger, it was very natural for her to come to the rescue. Baek Jevel was shocked by the knowledge of his new comrade and did not understand what a difficult path he had gone through to gain such experience and knowledge. Li Chan was about to move on, and his half-ghost friend asked what he was planning to do. The tyrant replied that he wanted to get more crystal eyes from the female Jigvi. Buck was a little worried about the state of his comrade's health, since it was obvious that after a hard battle he needed rest. But the guy replied that he was already much better and his endurance indicators had noticeably recovered. He still had options on how to regain his strength. He still hadn't used the crystal eye he'd gotten from the first boss. He has his own methods of renewing and obtaining power, so the guy decided to get this power. Previously, he had wondered whether it was worth absorbing the crystal eye after absorbing Jigui's lights. He believed that he would grow his own lights, so creating an artifact from the eye would be more effective. Despite his assumption, the elder replied that the crystal eye must be eaten in order to move from simply adding attributes to core transformation. In addition, the old man mentioned that once the guy swallows this trophy, he can become the monster Jigui himself. The properties of his power began to change noticeably, and now his body purification skill has turned into more destructive power. He has become the all-consuming flame of the 8 trigrams. Due to the fact that the guy was able to use Jigui's features, he managed to increase his agility and strength parameters. The system reported that as a result of receiving the power of the spirit, he mastered the method of using the flame of spirits, comprehended poltergeist and pyrokinesis. Using his new strength, he took off to claim his prey. The guy gained spiritual wings. His appearance noticeably changed the moment he changed into the form of a magical bird. With terrifying speed, he rushed straight towards his goal. The Haof fighters continued to resist, while the guy from the White Tiger clan was on his own and simply trying to avoid death. But at one point, Li Chan's son joined their battle and ended the battle using the Fang of the Black Mountain Monarch. With a cold gaze filled with the desire to kill, the guide began to approach his wounded prey. The previously confident mace demon had lost all his strength. His wounds made it impossible for him to continue fighting, so he simply begged for this suffering to end. Li Chang's son was not interested in him, so he listened and finished what he started, after which he absorbed his soul and strength. The next step was to absorb the power of the female Jigui, which he was also able to eliminate thanks to the chain reaction of the power of the Black Mountain Monarch. Using a large amount of magical power at a time turned out to be as effective as possible, so the guy quickly acquired another crystal spirit eye. By absorbing this item, he again greatly increased his magical power. The all-consuming flame of the 8 trigrams and poltergeist have been strengthened. In addition, the system recommended using the first form of all-consuming flame with distrust in order to subdue this ability much faster. This time he received much less magical power, its amount approached the 300-point mark. Most likely, this was due to the fact that he absorbed the trophy for the second time and certain limits were triggered. Due to the continuous receipt of the power of this spirit, the guy acquired the title of the Vessel of Jigvi. Having become Jigvi, a clot of fire and spirit, he was able to use her attributes at his own discretion. He could plunge the earth into the flames of death and capture the heavens. The dungeon rating was updated, and in just 2 weeks, the guy climbed to 9th place, while more successful participants spent more than 10 years of constant battles for a similar result. The guy understood that messages from the system about the fall of the 2 rulers of the Black and Red Mountain Range must have created real chaos among the rest of the White Tiger Clan fighters. But he still had unfinished business, so he turned his attention to an injured member of the Hayoff clan named Bei Wu General. He was suffering from burns he received due to a surprise attack from rookie Li Chang. Li Chan's son decided to take the opportunity and offered the guy to ease his suffering in exchange for all the information he knows regarding the situation between the Hayoff clan and the White Tiger clan. Meanwhile, Baek Ji-vul reached the scene. Looking at his comrade who had mastered such incredible power of fire, he felt as if Li Chan had moved the core of the sun towards himself. To start the conversation, the guy mentioned that he already knew that the White Tiger had hired their clan to open the Black Red Mountain Range. The exhausted, cowardly guy confirmed his words. At the same moment, Li Chang thought about the fact that the strongest organization in Korea began to grow dramatically about 15 years ago. This was related to the 7 mysterious writings of San, consisting of 7 scrolls. White Tiger unearthed these divine artifacts 20 years ago in an unnamed dungeon. White Tiger was able to find only 3 scriptures, but even they were endowed with unimaginable power and significant results could be extracted from them. Clan Chief Heavenly Swordsman Mun Sung is now considered one of the strongest swordsmen in the world, but those who follow him are not that extraordinary. However, after a sudden explosive growth, they gained enormous fame. They even became a clan known throughout the world, and it all happened not so long ago. Even on the verge of painful death, the guy adhered to the code of honor and did not want to tell all the secrets of his organization, but Li Chan cruelly replied that he would decide for himself whether to listen to the pleas of the victim or not. The guy had no other choice, so he agreed. He revealed that each of the scrolls belonging to the 7 mysterious writings of San had different contents, and was known to each teach how to call upon the power of different ancient constellations forgotten in their days. Li Chang showed great interest in understanding the power of the forgotten stars. It is known among the gods that when light was first created at the beginning of the cosmos, there were not many constellations in the sky. Back then, they were as weak as the cosmos, but they possessed colossal wholly destructive power. Although over time, each of them found its place in accordance with the laws of this world. Traces of their existence littered the cosmos and the world, gradually gaining a certain balance. The gloomy god knew that they were called forgotten stars, but previously he could not even imagine that there were still opportunities to borrow their power. It became obvious that the ruler of the abyss kept this a secret from the other deities, since this was his ace in the hole. As it turned out, of the 3 retinues found by the White Tiger, they were only able to open 2. Bei Wujiang heard that the most important one is still not revealed. After these words, Li Chang realized that this was due to the fact that they were unable to obtain Peter's key. It became clear that this scripture was revealed precisely with his help. Having learned this information, the guy inquired about what the motive of the remnants of the Hayoff clan was. He understood that they were unlikely to come only for revenge or the murder of recruits. The exhausted guy replied that their goal was to find an illusory pearl. It was about the very object that Li Chang was able to discover in the bird's nest. He really thought that the deep dislike of smallpox that he felt hid some secret relationship between the 2 large organizations that had previously collaborated. Pi Wu-jian continued his story. From the first scroll, the clan borrowed a way to create an unrivaled warrior. Of the 7 mysterious scriptures, the first was written about a man who lost his soul after being possessed by starlight. People who have lost their soul also lose their ego, but since this emptiness is filled with starlight, they become amazingly powerful warriors. Thus, they are reborn as holy knights, faithfully carrying out the orders of the stars. To create such powerful warriors, you need wild flowers from the flower beds in Siakan, as well as crying and laughing flowers. With their help, you can create an illusory pearl. Since all these ingredients were in one dungeon, it became clear why the White Tiger clan made this place a training camp. The Black and Red Mountain Range was geographically similar to the flower beds of Siakan. Moreover, it is great for testing new members and selecting capable ones in order to obtain powerful warriors. It was possible not to even mention that the people who disappeared here did not listen to the instructions of the instructors, went beyond the safe zones and fell victims to monsters. These guesses led the guide to the idea that the person overseeing this and leading all these projects is none other than the second commander of the White Tiger clan, Executive Director O. However, after Bestla's tomb disappeared overnight and Peter's key simply flew away, the situation for them changed for the worse, so Li Chan gained precious time to implement his plans. Continuing to extract information from the Hayoff fighter, Li Chan-sung guessed that they were going to reveal the true face of the White Tiger thanks to the illusory pearl. In addition, he believed that they had other evidence that would add weight to their argument. Most of the secrets came true, but it was obvious that there was something that this guy could not know. Having heard everything he needed, Li Chan complied with his enemy's request. Noticing that the White Tiger clan fighter was still alive, he decided that it would be nice to find out some more information, but from another organization. He wanted to know the location of the research center where they created the illusory pearl and cultivated powerful warriors en masse. The guy approached the fighter and offered to help him in exchange for the information he needed. The man understood that this was one of the recruits in front of him, so he asked in shock why he was not afraid of the wrath of their patron god. In response to his words, the guy with a serious look asked if the ward of the White Clan was sure that the patron was on his side. After these words, the fighter, scared to death and disappointed in the situation, received a message from the system that Kaju had lost interest in the believer, that he had achieved nothing. Looking at the sky, Li Chang stated that the tiger, who was in trouble, wanted to get a more persistent and strong believer, whose strength he could count on. Watching the player's impudent speech, Haju began to laugh disgustingly and maliciously. Having learned the necessary information about the location of the laboratory from the White Tiger fighter, Li Chang proceeded to fulfill his promise to his friend's son and suddenly tore off his clothes. After that, he asked the guy to sit in the lotus position. Ashamed of his own body due to the fact that he was despised all his life, Baek Jevel excitedly asked if the tyrant could do this after difficult battles. Li Chan's son gave him real hope and replied that he was now able to heal his comrade. It was a difficult process, so he explained that studying the residual energy of a ghostborn would take some time, while it was very easy to lose track of the process. Moreover, Baek will experience more difficulties, because even if in the real world the whole process takes several hours, the patient will feel that several weeks or even months will pass. Due to the pacification of such hysterical energy, after healing he will be exhausted, so he will have to restore his strength. Although the process is difficult, he reassured Beck that it will definitely end at one point, so there is no point in giving up. Beck Jayeval already knew that if he even thought about retreating for a second, he would be demonized, which meant that he would turn into a monster or a ghost. Li Chang's son reassured him that if he noticed even a hint of this, he would immediately get rid of his body without even thinking about it. He remembers that the consequences could be unimaginable, since there were times in his life as a shadow god when this recruit's father, Xerxes, walked around freely, and it was an absolute disaster. Overflowing with confidence in his comrade, Beck Jevel was ready for any test and asked him not to worry. At that moment, Li Chan noticed that Beck was very similar to his father, because his will was as unshakable as that of the divine being of shadows. After discussing all the details, Li Chang's son began to release the flames of the 8 trigrams, which changed its appearance as it acquired destructive properties. The system reported that the ghost born was covered in flames. The fire of the first form of the end of the world flame began to envelop his body. Li Chang mentally turned to him, wanting not to lose himself and not give up, no matter what. A moment later, Beck felt his consciousness being transported to another place. He saw himself as a child, remembering those terrifying times. He would not want to repeat that nightmare. In this vision, some unfamiliar guy picked up his weakened body and dragged him with him. Beck realized that this was his memory, and he himself was in the world of his subconscious. He didn't want to remember those times. The guy who saved him from the cold brought him to the shelter, where he was immediately thrown out into the street, calling him a terrifying monster. To survive, the little guy, covered in burns, had to eat malnutrition. He didn't have a safe place to stay, so he lived on the street while the other children harassed him because of his terrible appearance. Since these were still his personal memories, he could confidently think that he was still alive. A moment later, he heard the voice of a shadow that appeared in front of him. The entity stated that it was looking for him, after which it noted that the winds in this place were cold, and they should move on before the winter became even harsher. The ghost extended his hand to him and offered to go together, saying that Beck would never be alone again. At that moment, the guy remembered the words of his comrade that he should not lose control of himself. At the last moment, he removed his hand and prevented the ghost from gaining control of his body and mind. Beck began to run away from this entity, realizing that he did not belong here. After that, he began to feel Li Chan's presence more strongly, and the system reported that the goddess of justice Minerva smiled at the righteous heart of the talented player. Despite all the difficulties, they overcame a key moment. Chan Sung noticed that the ghost son is very persistent, and this is his admirable trait. He thought that if this guy began to be demonized, there was no guarantee that he would be able to get rid of him even if he gained access to Jigwee's entire vessel. Still, this was not strange. Beck had incredible potential, since most likely he was the son of Xerxes himself. While he was trying to catch his breath after treatment, Li Chan decided to finish some business and use runes that hid the guy's location from outside observers. He was ready to look at the pearls of illusion of the research center, but before that he had to complete one task that had been started for a long time. Activating his beast sense skill, he went in pursuit of the witness. Li Chan couldn't let Song Yujong tell the executive director what he saw. Yu Ying knew that he had to tell COO everything, no matter what the cost. He tried to run away with all his might, as he understood that Li Chang was concentrating on treating the second promising recruit. But at one moment, he felt the presence of the one from whom he was trying to hide. Li Chang's son was able to catch up with him and throw him to the ground, which is why the invisibility of the director's ward was revealed. The guy lying on the ground understood that he could not hide from such a monster. Li Chang's gaze was cold and full of killing intent. Having no other choice, Song Yujong decided to draw his sword and begin to defend himself. But his opponent was significantly superior to him in speed, and within a moment he was wounded in the shoulder. To prevent his opponent from escaping, Li Chang pinned him to a tree. The player had finally reached the level at which he could confidently defeat the director's ward, who used advanced surveillance skills. When the White Tiger Clan fighter asked what Li Chang planned to do next, the guy replied that at first he wanted to quickly finish off the hound dog of the White Tiger Clan, but changed his mind because he did not want COO to suspect him of this. Song Yujong was concerned about the hopelessness of the situation, but after these words he began to hope that they could come to an agreement. But unexpectedly for him, Li Chang took out an illusory pearl and said that he had an excellent way to improve relationships, so there was no need to choose the difficult path. After these words, he forced the guy to swallow this object, which will make him lose his own ego. The system reported that his thoughts were paralyzed, the ego was eliminated, and he fell into a hypnotic trance. To check if everything really worked as it should, Li Chang ordered him to stand up. Hearing this, Song Yujong rose to his feet without hesitation. From this pitiful sight, Li Chang was forced to say that losing his soul was very sad. The former ward of the general director has become an ordinary shell, a body that is capable of carrying out any orders. Moreover, he did not think at all about how dangerous this order was and was even ready to strangle himself. This was more than enough. Seeing the loyalty of his new toy, Li Chang asked him to stop. Without any delay, Song Yujong stopped. Taking a look at the results of the illusory pearl, Li Chang agreed that the White Tiger Clan had indeed done something incredible. They were able to pull something similar out of low-level ingredients, so it was hard to guess how strong the other items were. Addressing the body without an identity, Li Chang ordered him to inform General Manager O that no abnormalities were found regarding the recruits. He also ordered him to act as usual, as if nothing had happened. Hypnotized, Song Yujong accepted the order and began to carry it out, while Haju, observing his actions, became interested in the player's aspirations. Without answering the deity, Li Chang asked the hypnotized fighter to return. The guy with no identity accepted a new order. He began to use his technique to move without a trace. At that very moment, Li Chang changed his mind and asked him to stay a little longer. He asked his puppet to teach him a technique that he uses for surveillance and undetected movement. Li Chang thought that she actually seemed more useful than he had previously thought. In addition, he believed that she could be a great match for Baek Jayavil. With his index finger raised instructively, Song Yujong declared that this was the lagging storm of the flying tiger. He said that Li Chang could use the wind for invisibility or camouflage, and since this technique was derived from tiger stride, the recruit would be able to use it. The player asked the fighter to teach him this technique. Sun Yujong replied that he did not have a skill book with him, so it would take quite a lot of time. Li Chang replied that he would figure out how to master it himself. But doubting the orders, Song Yujong proceeded to demonstrate this ability. Watching the actions of the hypnotized man, Li Chang began to understand the essence of this ability. His puppet was shocked that the rookie was able to recreate these movements just by observing them. After acquiring this power, Li Chang improved the basic skill of Tiger Walk and gained an ability called Flying Tiger Lagging Storm, which surpasses the basic skill in terms of speed, agility, and stealth. Song Yujong was hypnotized, but due to the order that he should behave as usual, the body could not help but be surprised, and he stated that he had been mastering this power for several years, while the rookie was able to learn it after observing the use. Once again, Song Ying stated that Li Chansung is an amazing person. Tired of these compliments, the guy gave the order to the guy to move on. After this, Li Chan's son also began to use new abilities, and using invisibility, he went to the place of interest to him. Watching all this, Haja laughed, in absolute shock. The system reported Pabelsag's opinion that the player's movements were great for hunting skills, so she thought about which one should be given to a talented guy as a reward for his performance. Li Chang stopped near the place where the female Jigui arrived on the battlefield. From Beck's words, he learned that a pair of Jigwis lay an egg once every 100 years. He discovered this bird's nest. Although an egg is laid once every 100 years, it apparently took even longer to hatch. Observing the behavior of this monster, Li Chang learned that Jigui has 3 forms, but since he is a clod of spirits, he actually does not have a physical body. Since their ancestors chose the bird form, their descendants also stick to it, but can change it based on their environment. In addition, the guy understood that it was possible to redirect the nature of this creature in a good direction and increase their intelligence. The balance of the egg's power and the fact that it was underdeveloped seemed like a great opportunity to test his theory. Still, the guy believed that it would be better for him if this monster became a spirit bird. The guy began to absorb his power, while Haja became interested in how he was going to hatch the egg. Without waiting for an answer, God advised that instead of the crude form of a winged animal, choose the form of a rare monster, perhaps even a tiger. At the same time, Pabel Sag joined the discussion and first suggested choosing a hunting dog, and then a young falcon and a tengu. The guy thanked them for their advice and thought that the dragon's daughter had finally offered him something truly reasonable. At the same time, a conflict began between the 2 deities, and the system noticed that their relationship had deteriorated significantly. They were like a cat and a dog who could not reach a common opinion. Having absorbed the spirit chick, the guy began to use his inner flame to raise it into the desired monster. Having finished this matter, the guy went to the research center. Meanwhile, things were quite hectic inside as unexpected guests from the government were heading towards them. Despite this, the executive director asked them to just wait, saying that everything would be resolved soon. He was afraid that despite all his achievements, he faced the risk of losing everything. To gain his glory, he used the illusory pearl to create a divine warrior, and with the 3rd level basic ability, he developed star coordinates, various divine ornaments and artifacts. Despite all that he had achieved with the white tiger, the man did not understand why the authorities sent an inspection department to him. Apparently, he did not see any crimes behind him. In his opinion, this was due to the fact that he appropriated a small amount of the budget that was allocated for the development of some government projects. Fearing the consequences, he contacted Executive Director O a bunch of times to get instructions, but in response, the old man simply told him to wait. The inspection council said that the inspection would come specifically on this day, and 3rd-rank management would come to them on an official visit. Addressing his artificial soldiers, he ordered them to destroy all documents that could expose them to suspicion. Returning to one of the most suspicious projects called JIDA, the man remembered that his customer and chief engineer was the executive director O himself, which is why the authorities were so interested in whether everything they did was legal. For such a controversial scientist, attention from the association was especially dangerous. In addition, he was close to receiving the White Tiger rank for his contributions to the organization. On the other hand, he was able to instantly calm down after thinking that all the members of the White Tiger clan were people with incredible influence, so he would definitely be able to earn a huge amount of money. To eliminate possible risks, he wanted to make sure that he could always have emergency exits. Returning to the Divine Warrior project, he thought that it would be nice to get the bodies of the 2 most effective recruits. He didn't know where they were, since the connection had suddenly been cut off, but he thought that it would be nice to replenish his collection with such strong specimens. As it turned out, as a victim, he had already used one of the strong newcomers, with whom Li Chang began his mission. Returning to the problems of information leakage, he began to yell at his subordinates for still not being able to return the illusory pill. In addition, those subordinates who were sent on this mission have not yet returned. While the conflict between the deities was only gaining momentum, Li Chang reached his destination. He immediately noticed that this place was an attractive location for creating a laboratory, because nearby were the screeching flowers that were used as an ingredient to create an illusory pearl. The entrance was well guarded, so it was impossible to enter without hiding your presence. When using this disguise, even the sounds he made instantly dissipated into the air. Li Chang headed towards the entrance with great speed. He rushed past the inexperienced fighters, so they were unable to notice him. Despite this, one of the fighters felt something strange. It really seemed to him that something flew past them, but his comrade reassured him, saying that it was just his imagination. They dismissed this strange feeling as excitement and anxiety due to the fact that the association's inspection department was scheduled to visit them. Moving along the corridors, the guy used not only camouflage, but also the eye of a viper, with the help of which he managed to identify all the traps along the way and bypass them. The serpent that encircles the world could not hide his delight at the player's ability to use the abilities he had bestowed upon him. At the same time, the guy was interested in what all the employees were so worried about. Seniors hurriedly gave orders, while their wards hurried to hide some details of their activities and hid documentation. To find out what was going on, the guy enhanced his hearing with the help of the beast's sense skill, thanks to which he could pick up all the sounds in the area, despite the high speed of movement. He could hear them talking about how they had a lot to do, but they had to be interrupted by a sudden visit from people from the State Association. In addition, everyone was worried that the fighters sent to retrieve the lost illusory pearl had not yet returned. A moment later, their panic intensified as they saw a message from the system that the male and female Jighi had been defeated, while the bodies of the exhausted fighters were discovered next to them. Despite this news, they were still puzzled about how to clear the premises of their atrocities before the inspection department arrived. At the same time, Lee Chang-sung finally discovered the location where the illusory pearl production facility was located. While at the entrance, he began to smell a strong smell of poisonous herbs. Around him were many divine warriors created with the help of illusory pearls. The head of the Tiger Disaster closely watched the rookie's actions. The guy was not afraid to be in a place filled with fumes of poisons, because his immunity to 10 poisons was enough to neutralize all the harm. He was forced to stop when he encountered a door that required proof of identity. To enter, he had to enter the pattern or code word needed to open it. Simply kicking down the door was the easiest option, but at this stage Li Chang couldn't make any noise. He began to think about what the key could be, and at the same moment, the only logical answer seemed to be Peter's key. The guy was not sure of his guess, but it seemed to him that the object that he constantly carries with him could be a clue. At the same moment, he changed his mind about getting the valuable thing, as the ruler of the abyss continued to watch him. He assumed that just the connection with this key would be enough for him to move on. As it turned out, his assumption turned out to be correct and the gentleman's identity was confirmed, after which the locking mechanism turned off and the door began to open. Lee Chang-sung couldn't believe that the item he was able to obtain from the mountain dungeon had such incredible power that it could deal with such things instantly. The system reported that Haju was a little confused by how quickly the mechanism opened. He even had a few questions for the player about whether he had a talent for picking locks. After the player went inside, he found what he came for. Around him were countless test subjects who had begun their transformation into divine tiger warriors who had gotten into trouble. The guy considered what the researchers of the White Tiger clan were doing was an abomination. At one point he noticed that the system began to report the dissatisfaction of the goddess of justice. The goddess burst into anger and prayed for justice, after which the guy received an unexpected quest. Owl was extremely disappointed with the villainous and dark influence that Kaja had spread in the human world. She felt sorry for those who lost their lives while trapped in the machines, so she began to pray to the player to give the victims peace and tranquility. The reward for this was her blessing, befitting the results. No matter how angry she was with the Abyss ruler, Li Chang still didn't think she was really ready for such a step. The blessing corresponding to its results meant that Li Chang-sung would be able to receive powers from her. Haju waited with curiosity for the guy's answer, which he understood that if he accepted this quest, then the ruler of the abyss would turn his back on him. However, on the other hand, he understood that if he refused Minerva's plea, then the goddess would completely renounce him. The choice was really difficult. At the same moment, Minerva watched the player with tension. But instead of choosing between which deity's inclination he would have to lose, Li Chang-sung came up with a cunning plan. He turned to Haj and stated that he wanted to ask something from the patron of his clan. Haj cordially agreed to listen to the guy, so Li Chan continued, saying that the patron probably knows the reason why he is in this place. The patron nodded his head in agreement and suggested getting straight to the point. He realized that both deities wanted to get his power, so he gave a vague tip and stated that he was going to take everything that was in this laboratory. In addition, he added that he does not intend to allow others to have what he himself does not have. After these words, he asked what the tiger, who was in trouble, thought about this. Chan's son believed that the ruler of the abyss was very interested in him. In addition, he was a very sought-after candidate for priesthood, so it was unlikely that they would refuse him due to disagreements within the laboratory. In response, Haju began to smirk at the player's obvious intentions and then said that he still liked him, even though he was trying to fool one of his family members with his acting. In the end, the deity promised that he would not suppress the recruit's wild ambitions. Li Chang received a sudden quest called Tiger Robbery. Kaju stated his passionate desire to see what the new priest candidate was capable of, so he specified in the conditions that the tyrant must take everything he sees, after which he should consume these spoils. If successful, he will be able to additionally receive a new blessing from this deity. His plan worked, and now he can satisfy the interests of both deities. Minerva was delighted with the decision the player she was interested in made. Having discussed all the details and accepted the quest, the guy was ready to begin collecting an incredible amount of powerful items. But suddenly for him, he missed how he stopped using disguise and was noticed by the divine warriors. In any case, he was going to use the destructive power of the doomsday flames of the 8 trigrams urn, which would leave no trace after eliminating the enemies. In addition, he equipped the vessel with Jigvi. The magical power of the previously absorbed monster began to spread throughout the room. The powerful fire caused panic on the faces of the men, who had everything under control for several minutes. Li Chang decided not to delay the destruction of this disgusting place, so he summoned a hurricane of fire spirit flames. Within a moment, its power spread throughout the entire building. Those outside witnessed a sudden explosion of incredible power. The fighters who could use ice magic began to extinguish the flames from afar. Their efforts turned out to be pointless, since none of them could compare with the destructive power of the flames of the fire spirit. Real horror was happening before the eyes of the head of the laboratory. He was in despair and did not understand what was happening to the place where all his achievements were located. Addressing his charges, he was interested in what the security service was doing and how they allowed this to happen. A few seconds later, another powerful explosion completely destroyed the entrance, and the fat man flew to the side. The concerned ward asked his boss if everything was okay. The man was simply shocked and, first of all, asked how many people they had lost. It was not easy to answer this question. The remnants of their forces tried to leave the building. They were badly injured, and in addition to burns, many of them received reports that they had a burn infection. The system recommended that they leave the danger zone. It was obvious that Li Chan, as always, tried not to leave any traces behind him. A moment later, the destructive fire of the 8 trigrams flame began to catch up with them. The boss of the laboratory could not stand by. Noticing the stranger, he immediately rushed to attack. Li Chang stopped his attack and noted that this attempt was not bad. The scientist immediately moved on to questions. He was wondering who created all this chaos. He assumed that he was sent by the survivors of the Hayoff clan. Besides, he was wondering how the guy could control Jigwi's doomsday flames. Looking at the guy again, he recognized the strongest recruit of their training camp. At that very moment, he realized that the situation was not at all under their control, because they had previously been informed that Li Chan's son should be in a completely different place. Having seen the recruit in person, who looked like a promising vessel for him, he completely forgot that his laboratory had been looted and destroyed. He believed that by having such warriors at his disposal, in 5 years he would be able to create a clan like the White Tiger, which would bring him an incredible amount of money and power. At that moment, when the man, filled with greed, delved deeper into his dreams, Li Chang began to use disguise in order to escape from the sight of a powerful enemy. The scientist could not miss such a great opportunity, so he launched a blow in his direction, enhanced by magical energy. At the same moment, the flying tiger skill was forcibly deactivated and the stealth was revealed. The guy was forced to dodge this attack. Just a few seconds later, a large explosion occurred behind him. It became clear that the strength of this fat man should not be underestimated. Without hesitation, he immediately rushed into close combat using his huge two-handed sword. Looking at the man's face, the guy realized that he had become a victim of his own experiments. The scientist turned out to be one of the warriors sent by God. Continuing to repel countless powerful attacks from this monster, Li Chang realized that not only ordinary soldiers, but also leaders had become warriors sent by God. Since this happened to the organization's chief scientist, it could be assumed that some of the other White Tiger leaders also underwent similar changes. On the other hand, it wasn't so bad, because he had the opportunity to test his strength against such a strong opponent. To change the course of the battle, the guy decided to distribute additional points in favor of speed and agility. After this, the scientist began to feel the pressure increase. He was forced to go on defense as the rookie continued to unleash a rapid and precise series of attacks with his dragon blade. Li Chang was able to gain a slight advantage, so the scientist went to a safer distance. He couldn't believe that this was really a beginner and not an experienced fighter. The guy left one of the clan leaders no other choice, so he resorted to using ghostly energy. His magical power became denser. Watching this, Li Chang received messages from the system about the danger. A powerful area attack was directed towards the talented player. Li Chang had no choice but to leave the affected area. He was really annoyed by the ghostly energy, which was reminiscent of Haj's power. When the guy tried to move to a more advantageous place, artificial warriors appeared behind him. They were furious about what happened to the laboratory, so they were ready to give their lives for the director. Li Chang couldn't believe that even they were also God-sent warriors. To deal with their numerical advantage, Li Chang resorted to using blood poison to enhance the Doomsday Fire barrier. He protected himself from these monsters in order to gain some time. Despite the power of his technique, he was unable to stop the God-sent warriors. The enemies managed to break through his barrier. It was dangerous to fight further, so the guy decided to take a desperate step. He acted wisely and decided to flee in order to divide the enemy forces. Continuing to move through the corridors of the remains of the laboratory, the guy stopped using his disguise. The stupid cloned warriors shouted that they managed to trap the enemy. But the guy's cold and purposeful gaze said otherwise. Of course, the scientist was wary of his calm behavior. He was furious because he realized that they hadn't actually cornered him. He had just deliberately brought them to this place so as not to have to fight multiple people at the same time. Noticing the guy's movement, he shouted to his charges to immediately bend down. But it was too late, and the scientist could only watch as his fighters fell one after another. While in a narrow corridor, Li Chang resorted to using his razor-sharp whip, which was saturated with magical energy. By destroying his enemies, his power began to increase and his accuracy increased significantly. But at one point, the guy was so carried away by the extermination of his enemies that he did not notice how the director himself approached him, who was the most dangerous among all. In an instant, the man was able to catch the guy by the neck and lift him up, pressing him against the wall. He shouted that he had finally caught the naive recruit. The arrogant scientist shouted that he was far superior to the tyrant at all levels and in all characteristics, so he should immediately surrender and become his puppet. But instead of confusion and panic, there was a confident smile on the recruit's face, with which he asked whether the scientist was really sure that since he was able to catch him, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. The arrogant man thought he was in control, but he was proven wrong. Within a moment he saw that there was a seal on Li Chan's right hand, which had a huge amount of energy concentrated. A legendary artifact, a fish gut sword, began to appear from his right hand. At the same moment, a dragon tooth appeared in his left hand. With a cold gaze, he said the name of the technique. The twin swords sounded with a loud scream. At the same moment, the dagger called the crooked tooth of the evil dragon awakened. When it comes to divine artifacts, it is worth noting that Oyezi earned eternal fame after he created his first masterpieces. At the same time, the demonic blacksmith Tauti created countless ingenious things so that the title of blacksmith would be associated only with him. Even among the gods and stars, these two are considered known opposing forces. It is impossible to decide which of them is the best craftsman. Because both are valued for different things, and the eras and places they worked in are different, making them not compete head-to-head with each other. However, now, at this very moment when Li Chang has revealed the power of both legendary blacksmith's items, it is time to decide who is the best. The fish gut sword that has quenched its bloodlust is sparkling like never before, and the evil dragon's crooked tooth has in turn begun to show its true value. Li Chang fulfilled the necessary conditions, and legendary events took place before the scientist's eyes. The Shadow God, as an expert with killing weapons, was able to unleash the full potential of the evil dragon's crooked tooth. It is known that the blade that the guy received from Pabelsag has the effect of prolonged bleeding, but other effects cannot be determined, since its owner has not yet fulfilled some of the requirements. Crossing his swords, the guy took a deep breath, the sound of the twin swords causing his opponent to tremble. Pabelsag could not believe that the player she was attracted to was able to hurt her divine artifact, bestowed by the goddess Tiamat. The two famous blades also attracted the interest of other deities. Facing such a monster as Li Chang, the scientist began to turn to his bestial instincts, which he received from his patron. It told him to avoid this guy at all costs. The guy only slightly swung, and at that moment, his enemy felt that if he did not avoid these blows, he would immediately die. Having no time to dodge, the scientist decided to go on defense. He relied on his huge two-handed sword. The first attack was blocked, but the man began to feel exhausted, and he flew several meters back. After delivering the first test attack, Li Chang noticed that the sword made by the first Oyezi began to cry and complain that he did not want to end the battle so quickly. The hunger of the fish gut sword was understandable, since this item had been sealed hundreds of years ago. At that very moment, Dragafon decided to join in the fun. This sword begged to be seen what it could do. Li Chang couldn't refuse him and swung it towards his enemy. An incredible amount of energy was directed towards the scientist, who was not able to fight against such power. He tried his best to hold back the attack, but the pressure was too much. At one point, his two-handed sword broke. While the fish gut sword showed off its shiny blade, the prey thought that in order to survive, it must immediately flee the battlefield. In the middle of the battle, Li Chang was forced to choose between his two blades. Both of them were proud and eager to make the final blow. While the guy was thinking about which legendary artifact to use, the scientist was already running away. Li Chang could not let go of this leader, because this threatened him with problems within the White Tiger clan, which would disrupt his plans. In order not to have to choose, the guy struck a double blow with his best blades. In addition, he decided to make sure that this would be enough, so he decided to take out the enemy using the Black Mountain Monarch Claw skill. It was impossible to escape from such incredible power. Looking around, the scientist managed to notice the inevitable collision with the mysterious force of the mysterious newcomer. A powerful explosion ended this battle and the enemy was defeated. The system reported that the scientist began to experience severe despair. He still had a thirst for life, but he was doomed. One blow from the legendary blades, enhanced by the destructive power of the flames of 8 trigrams, was enough to destroy the warrior sent by God. In addition, the fire of the end of the world continued to intensify as it fed on the anger of its owner. The scientist's regrets and desperate attempts did not escape the player's attention. he did not understand where this man was trying to crawl away in such a hopeless situation. He walked slowly behind him to find out what purpose his prey was pursuing. The system reported that player Yasang-1 has been eliminated and is no longer in the dungeon ranking. As it turned out, he was heading towards the door that led to some kind of hidden laboratory. Li Chang recalled his sword and approached the mysterious entrance. The door was locked. The player wondered if he could get inside again using the power of Pedro's key. With his hand, he was again able to bypass the laboratory's defenses. The master's identity was confirmed and Li Chang gained access to another laboratory, which contained the secrets of the terrifying scientist clan of the White Tiger. At that moment, the guy realized that this key was suitable for opening anything that was protected, no matter whether it was a door or a complex mechanism. When he went inside, he saw a large mechanism with a girl on it. Her entire body was connected to sensors and mechanisms that were causing her changes. Li Chan headed closer to see what Yasang-1 was really up to. The guy saw that one of the recruits had become a victim of the experiments of a man. Most likely, the scientist believed that she would make an excellent warrior, sent by God. Li Chan-sung began to remember who she was. It was not difficult, because the scientist's victim was his faithful fan, who had shown interest in the tyrant's personality from the very beginning of the training camp. Looking at the list of participants, he learned that her name was Shin Yunseo. The guy assumed that she had already been turned into a warrior sent by God. To make sure what condition she was in, the guy took her hand and began analyzing it using his system. As it turned out, the scientist used a completely different method of transforming the player. He noticed that something stronger and more fundamental was used here, a force that even surpassed the warrior sent by God. The results of experiments on people were what he had to observe inside the laboratory. It was no longer strange that the local White Tiger clan warriors tried so hard to hide the documentation from the eyes of the commission representatives from the association. To create the real monster, these vile scientists used data from the bodies of demonic beasts, goblins, and even Jigui. It became obvious why Executive Director O tried so hard to hide this place from the others. Looking at this girl, Li Chan thought that the warriors sent by God were only a step on the path to the perfection that Shin Yunseo became. Thanks to the beast sense he received from Haju, Li Chan discovered her resemblance to the leader of the goblin army, whose name was Gildal. Using the viper's eyes, the guy learned that her transformation was 40% complete. This was too little to consider her a warrior or leader of the goblins. However, her physical body has become so strong that it is simply ridiculous to compare her to the ordinary person she was before. Her muscle fibers had become strengthened, and in her current state, she would be able to beat most of the players that arrived at the training camp alive. It was lucky that the hypnotic pearl and brainwashing were not used on her, so the girl's identity was preserved. While Kaju was watching the player's actions, waiting for his next actions, Minerva asked him to help the poor girl who had become a victim of the mad scientist's experiments. Without hesitation, Chan-sung began to turn off the equipment that continued to change the girl's body. Using the doomsday flames of the 8 trigrams urn, he began to purify her body. Minerva was satisfied with his choice. She ordered the player to hurry up and move the girl to a safe place, and then give her first aid. The power that was put into Shin's body and the first form of the end of the world flame clashed in fierce resistance. Li Chang tried to destroy all the negative aspects of this experiment, leaving only the positive aspects that would be useful for the poor girl's future. He could only watch, while Shin Yunseo had to show persistence and desire to live. At that moment, Kaju began to wonder where the ambitious desire to take everything for himself and leave disappeared. He mocked the player for choosing to heal this child instead of using her to increase his own power. In response, Li Chang said that he still had not given up on his intentions. Kaju did not understand what he meant, while the guy began to use the power of the Lord of the Underworld, with the help of which he began to absorb the power of those whom he destroyed inside the laboratory. The power that was absorbed at that moment began to improve the player's characteristics and became the material for the flame of the end of the world. While Haju laughed uncontrollably, Li Chang continued to improve, absorbing incredible amounts of power from the destroyed God-sent warriors. The ruler of the abyss behaved like a real scumbag. Even such a cruel person as the gloomy god could not understand his behavior. At that moment, he thought about how the preparations for the visit of the association representative were going. Since they were being followed, it was obvious that the executive director's opponent must have come along with the crime surveillance department. It was about Quan Hyo. This suspicious guy decided to come to the laboratory of the White Tiger clan, so it was logical that Chief O was considering measures to eliminate him. The player's idea of closing the dungeon was only supported by a superficial mana reading, so he could not even imagine that Director O was planning to remove his political opponent here. Most likely, the ruler of the abyss was laughing at this very situation, so Li Chang realized that he did not have time to hesitate. The clan fighters who remained outside watched all these explosions and thought about why their leader did not rush outside. They knew that the inspection department had already entered the dungeon, and it was only a matter of time before they reached the hidden laboratory. Just a moment after this reasoning, they felt a powerful vibration. The laboratory explosion spread to the place where they were located. As a result, among the witnesses there was no one left alive. This incident ended Li Chang, without leaving a trace